Hello, this is Anthony Crane with Pocket Coach, and in this video, I'm going to cover the first experiment in the Team Accelerator library, which is called Value Delivery Acceleration. I'm going to share my screen. You guys may have heard of this as relentless improvement in the past. I'm also going to get a timer going here, so let me get that. Okay, I'm aiming for 5 minutes, but it typically takes me half an hour or more to get through this with an actual client, so we'll see how I do on that. So let's start the stopwatch and see where we land. Okay, so relentless improvement is an old term about a team's always looking to become better, and it comes from the House of Lean. I've rebranded this for my kit to Value Delivery Acceleration, because that's honestly my whole job as a coach, is how do we get more value delivered with happier, more respected teams? And that's that duality. We have to have high respect teams and we have to deliver value. So here I have the hypothesis details. You can take a look at this. It's in the app as well. But if you read through this on your own, you can hit pause and see what the details are of this. But the bottom line is we teach in this experiment that there can be two kinds of backlogs for a team. The product development backlog, which is your features or your product stories, whatever you like to call them. And then you also have improvement things that accelerate the way you work. And so that we should always have both kinds of work happening on a high performing team. So to accompany this, so again, you can read through this on your own by hitting pause. But to accompany this, I have this little deck that I like to use to kind of get people into the idea. So we'll get as much of this covered as we can in the time I have with you. So, oh, look, it's going to do subtitles. That's fun. So here you can see the goal is relentless improvement still, but of what? Of our value delivery streams. The word value stream seems to confuse people. It's just the steps it takes to get value out the door. It's not complicated. People like to way overcomplicate it. There's lots of reasons. I have a different video for that. In the end, teams, we want them to be happier because of this trust and empowerment philosophy behind Agile, right? Customers, they're going to be happier if we actually deliver more value, and the company should be happier because there should be higher profitability, innovation, and stability. And innovation and stability, those work against each other. And yet we're promising both with this particular experiment. You can see it's a 5-step process here. We identify a business problem. So a lot of people hire me and they're like, hey, help us adopt SAFe, or help us, go Agile, or help us do Agile portfolio, right? Or business agility, my favorite, right? But I'm like, yeah, those are just strategies. What problem are you solving? And it's amazing how many of my clients don't have an answer to that. So we need to help the client figure out the business problem we're going to solve with this experiment. Then we explain what a value delivery acceleration team is. The third step, we pick our first experiments, and this right here is actually the first experiment, but there's more after this one. And then after you launch your VDA team, how do we continue to do experiments? And finally, pivot or persevere on the whole idea of being a value delivery acceleration team. Is it working for you? Every experiment has a pivot or persevere moment. And so for the rest of the deck, you can see on the top here, we walk through the different steps of this. Identify your primary business problem to solve. And again, you can pause it and take a look at all these example problems from real clients we've had. We need to figure out the real problem we're solving. After that, we need to learn how to baseline that problem so that we can show whether we're actually accelerating value delivery. So what metrics do you have? If you don't have any, then there's an experiment right there. Is to set up those metrics. That might be our first experiment. Anytime someone's like, we don't have that, that's great. Just another, okay, cool. There's an experiment. Let's prioritize it against all the other experiments we need to run, because we can only flow so many improvement experiments at one time. If we have the metrics, what are the current values? If someone else says, oh, they have those metrics, okay, nope. I'll tell you what, 6 months later, I've had clients do this. 6 months later, I still don't have the metrics. Like, oh, you never got them from so-and-so? I'm like, no, and it's been 6 months. So basically, I'd like to give people a 2-week deadline. And if you can't get me metrics by then either you don't have them or you don't use them. So let's get to metrics that are actually actionable. So at the end of this, we document the baseline either by using their existing ones or by saying we have no easy access to metrics. Let's go create an experiment in our backlog of experiments, that second backlog, to define KPIs. Then we talk about value delivery acceleration teams. Every one of these has 2 kinds of backlogs. What's interesting is a development team already usually has a product backlog, but they don't have a relentless improvement backlog. Whereas management teams often don't have any backlog at all. And we often have to start both of those backlogs for a management team. Every team can be using these backlogs. Next, we have to view all work as an experiment to be validated. And so you can see here, epics, feature stories, whatever you want to call them. Every single piece of work is an experiment. And we have companies who spend thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on product that never gets used because they don't realize it was an experiment that's failing, right? And so everything, whether it's product work or whether it's improvement work, it's an experiment. So here is this experiment here, exploring a coaching engagement. Problem, we have heard a coach can increase our ability to deliver more high quality value, but we need to learn more, right? This is for people who are skeptical about having a coach. Hypothesis, spend an hour with a coach, and at the end of it, you'll know whether or not you want a coach and whether that's the right coach. After an hour, you can, so this one is pivot or persevere. And at this point in the slide, that's where we decide that. So I'll tell you what, this is your chance to pivot or persevere. I've shown you a couple of slides. My timer just ran out. So if you want to pivot, you've learned enough, you can stop the video now. If you'd like to see the rest of the deck, I'm going to restart my 5-minute timer and I'll show you what else is in here. And you can personally decide pivot or persevere right now. All right, I'm starting my second 5 minutes. Typical outcome here, the attendees understand what it means to do value delivery acceleration, and they agree to trying some specific experiment as part of becoming a VDA team. So that's the outcome we're looking for this experiment. At this point, do y'all want to pick an experiment, or do you not want to become a value delivery acceleration, a VDA team, a relentless improvement team, right? So hopefully at this point, my clients are like, yeah, we're in. We want to be a VDA team. What's our first experiment going to be? And so we go to the next slide here. And so here's experiment number 2. It's called the Team Accelerator. So experiment number 1 is this thing that you're seeing here. The Team Accelerator is an experiment where we try to get half a year worth of maturity into a team in just 5 days. And the way we calculate this is the average high performing team can do 1 experiment a week. And so that's aggressive, 1 experiment a week. And in addition to their regular work. But if you think about it, then after 26 experiments, it would take them 26 weeks, which is a half a year. In the accelerator, we chisel out 5 days and we try to execute 26 experiments in 5 days. And if we do that, that's like a half a year boost. And I'm telling you, the teams that go through it are like, it's not an exaggeration. It's almost like going through a boot camp together where afterwards you form bonds, right? Because it's a lot of hard work, but it's seen as so valuable by the team that went through it, and they get to trust each other, learn about each other. So they do get a half a year acceleration in just 5 days, or however many experiments we get. So the time frame is 5 days, but the pivot or persevere is daily. So if a team chooses to do the accelerator, teams who are doing like safe and they plan out a quarter at a time, they just simply half load a sprint because it's 5 days. So for 1 sprint, you half load it, and that way you can still get work done, but you spend 5 days on the accelerator. So that's a nice way to do it. You can half load a sprint. The outcome here, 1, your product, your team skill, and 3, your team culture should all be accelerated. Your product should be accelerated, your team skills should be accelerated, and your team should be forming a really amazing culture as well. So those are the 3 things we look to accelerate with this experiment. Some details here. You can see we have, it targets any team, development, portfolio, value delivery acceleration team, a management team, operations, a business agility team, whatever kind of team you have, it works for any kind. So for new teams, this might be the first week for them. For existing teams, they half load a sprint. And then some of the experiments that you see in the accelerator, what is the vision for your product a quarter from now, a year from now? What is the roadmap to get there? What is the backlog of work? So teams that don't have any of these things, this is huge, right? If they already have them, then we quality check them. So that's product acceleration. That's just an example. There's more. Team skill acceleration. We do story writing, epic feature decomposition. We learn how to do agile estimation correctly, non-punitively. People do not understand how to do agile estimation. I've learned that in my career. And once they learn the real agile estimation skill, they're like, oh my gosh, we've been doing it so wrong. And metrics as well. So these are all team skills. And then culture acceleration. We learn about collective ownership, transparency, how to use working agreements to improve our performance as a team. So these are just some examples of the 26 experiments that are targeted in the accelerator. Again, if you're using the app, there is a library that lists all the accelerator experiments, and the idea is you get as many of those done as you can. You can also, if you don't want to do accelerator, a team can do a la carte. Just know they're only going to get 1 done a week, if that, and that's high performing. So that might be even less. So one of the things we like to measure is how many experiments are people closing, and how many do have done total. And that graph, you can see which teams are really engaging in value delivery acceleration. So we've automated that with tools like Jira and Microsoft ADO, et cetera. Okay, so if you want to go a la carte, right? So here, pick any high value experiment and advance on a weekly cadence. You'll want to create a backlog to hold those experiments, hopefully the same backlog with some sort of label to distinguish it from your product work. And then here's some examples from the Team Accelerator still. The value delivery acceleration commitment. Like, what is our commitment to this? And there's actually an experiment to do that. Shuhari is a phenomenal coaching agreement. You can learn about that in a different video. All of these have their own videos, by the way. Team collaboration environment, team name. people don't realize how important that is. It's critically important, and I often have to really push people to even try that experiment. Mob time, product KPIs, team KPIs, all of these great experiments to run. There's also value backlog experiments. You can see here, how do you fill the backlog of improvement ideas? You can do a value stream map and harvest improvements from the value stream. You can do a pain point walkthrough. You can do event shadowing and have experts watch events, strategy generation, team retrospectives. So, all of these techniques here are used to generate improvement backlog items. After you do the whole team formation, the end of it here is that you still will create new ones thereafter. So my app shows you a whole bunch of these, but beyond what's in the app, there's industry backlogs, core Scrum, core Agile, business agility, technical, Kanban, safe. These are all backlogs of ways to improve your team. Harvest from those, but also from your own retrospectives. Your retrospective should always end in one of two things: a working agreement or an experiment. And if you're not doing that, then you're not having effective retrospectives. There'll be a video about that. Value stream experiment ideas and cut and draw from pain points, either from your customer or your teams. So this is the last slide. Yep, in the thing I went over by another minute here. But for every experiment, remember, you must decide pivot or persevere. If the experiment is working, keep doing it. If the experiment is not working, then are there leading indicators that suggest it actually still might work? Then persevere or adjust and persevere. If there's no leading indicators to support a persevere, then pivot without mercy or guilt, pull a new VDA experiment and try again. And so that's it. So value delivery acceleration teams make a commitment to always having a value delivery backlog and using any one of these techniques to fill it, and using this backlog to fill it up, this backlog as experiment types, or they do the actual team accelerator. So there you have it. That is the value delivery acceleration experiment. And I hope you found the video useful. I'm going to stop now.